Mr. Bond, I've been hunting you down for way too long. However, it now seems luck is on my side. We finally meet again, but this time, you're mine. Hello, it's Dave at Vintage Toy Rush. Now, I've got this Mego Moonraker James Bond figure much more quickly and cheaper than I had anticipated. I got lucky on eBay, and it made me think it's about time I did a tour of my James Bond collection. I've split this tour into two parts. In part 2, we'll cover Roger Moore, my favourite Bond era as I grew up on those films. But today, in part 1, we'll focus on the Sean Connery era, and we'll use this 10th anniversary edition vinyl as our guide. It's a bit dog-eared, but that doesn't matter, it's a great double album. As well as vintage toys, I also collect old vinyl as well, especially soundtracks. And this is a great album as it chronicles all of the Sean Connery films from the 60s and 70s. So it all started with Dr. No, released in 1962.
I admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
That was shortly followed by From Russia with Love in 1963. Love that helicopter there, advanced technology for the day. And then just 1 year later in 64, Goldfinger was released. Goldfinger was played by Gert Frobe, a fantastic actor, and it also featured an actress by the name of Honor Blackman who played Pussy Galore. Yes, I know, back in the day, Bond films were scattered with all sorts of humour. I guess by today's standards, a lot of it is politically incorrect, but we cover that up by saying different times.
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
Now, the main title track for Goldfinger was, of course, sung by Shirley Bassey, and is perhaps now one of the most famous Bond themes of them all. Even back in the 60s, there were action figures for James Bond. The first were produced by A.C. Gilbert, who created a series of 3-inch non-posable figures for many of the early films. We all know Bond is an intelligence officer, a spy set in the world of the Secret Service, a glamorous world full of gadgets, exotic women, and of course, cars. And you can't have a Bond film without a good car chase. And in 1964, the Goldfinger film introduced the DB5, a relationship with Aston Martin that's continued to this very day. Now, allow me to get a little car geeky. In the book, Ian Fleming placed Bond in an Aston Martin DB Mark III, but at the time of the film, the DB5 had just been released. And so they made the decision to use Aston Martin's latest model. But this silver car here, by Corgi, isn't either of those. It's actually a DB6. Now, this little car was released in 1979. It's a Corgi Junior, and it does have one little feature which is quite nice from the film, and that's if I press this button, you get the ejector seat. Thankfully, back in the 60s, Corgi released this beast, model number 261, an accurate representation of the Goldfinger DB5 with all its gadgets. The bulletproof shield is released by pressing the exhaust pipes. The front-mounted guns and battery rams are released with this side button. It even comes with the henchman as seen in the film. This is by far the smallest action figure in my collection. He even has the gun as well. And what do we do with this figure? Reenact the film, of course. Press the button on the side. Where did he go? No idea.
Shocking.
Moving on, Connery then starred in possibly his most popular Bond film, and that is Thunderball. Released in 1965, it contains the famous underwater scene where Bond battles the army of scuba henchmen. There's Largo, the villain. There's a nice picture of Sean Connery with Domino and the shark, of course. In fact, we have this 007 annual from 1966, which coincides with Thunderball. Here's the opening article, Spies at Work. I can imagine the kids back in the 60s all wanting to be spies when they grew up. Here we have some photos from the making of Thunderball. There's Emilio Largo briefing his crack shock troops for the coming attack. And we also have the Spectre of Frogman moving into position with their submarine bomb. And then we have some great photos of Sean Connery whilst he's on the film set. Oh, that looks like such hard work, doesn't it? And of course, in between takes, he's relaxing with Paula in the sun. Ah, what a hard life.
Varga's behind you.
Really?
He must have followed us.
I think you got the point.
Now we have some more photos from the film. Look at that helicopter. Definitely 60s technology. And of course some photos from the famous underwater battle. AC Gilbert returned with 2 more action figures, this time 12-inch versions of Sean Connery himself in his scuba diving outfit from Thunderball. This is an awesome figure, I would love to add this to the collection. But my favourite is Oddjob from Goldfinger. What an awesome character. He comes with his bowler hat that acts as a weapon. I would so love to find this one, but it's really hard to find and it's not cheap either. Two years after Thunderball came You Only Live Twice, which introduced Blofeld on the screen for the first time. Now, the screenplay for this film was actually written by Roald Dahl, and it was only loosely based on Ian Fleming's 1964 novel of the same name. And here are some of those Ian Fleming novels published by Pan. I'll show more novels in part 2, but for now, these are relevant for the Connery era. I do like to read these books, as they tend to diverge from the films, although it does have to be said that the story quality does vary from book to book. Now, I just want to show you Thunderball. This is a rather battered copy. As you can see, the cover comes off, but what I do like are the bullet holes. Now, I wonder if Galoob took inspiration from this for their 18 toy line. And I just want to show you Casino Royale because this is rather an odd one out. A film was made of this book in 1967, just 2 months prior to You Only Live Twice, but it wasn't actually produced by Ian Productions. You see, it was a spy parody, a comedy, starring the likes of David Niven and Peter Sellers.
I suppose it would come in quite useful if you ever wanted to send anyone a
Poison pen letter, yes. All our new men say that.
Yes.
Yes, sir, we have a very highly developed sense of humor down here.
And it was in this same year that Sean Connery actually decided to retire from making Bond. Now this is rather fun. This is a Lone Star gun, released around the time of Thunderball. The packaging is very much of its time. It's got that 60s feel about it. James Bond is written in simple font, and there's a great picture of Sean Connery. Underneath we've got 007 clearly stamped. There's also an alternative of this box where the picture of Sean Connery is replaced by a lookalike. I have no idea who that lookalike is or why they did it, and I don't know if the box is harder to find. The gun itself has a black finish with a gold handle and also includes a silencer. I think this is actually modelled after a Walter P38. Reminds me of some other toy line actually. Back in the day, safety wasn't as much of a concern, so you could load a reel of caps into the top here, in the holder, and then you could fire away at will. It's a great looking gun. I shouldn't really be featuring this film on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which was released in 1969, and that's because it didn't actually star Sean Connery. Instead, we had George Lazenby, and that was his only appearance as Bond. In fact, he didn't have any previous acting experience at all. We did, however, have Telly Savalas as Blowfield, awesome. And finally we have Diamonds Are Forever, released in 1971. It featured Shirley Bassey again, singing on the title track, but also Louis Armstrong, who sang We Have All the Time in the World. Now, this was to be Connery's last film of this era, until he returned again in 1983 with Never Say Never Again, which was also based on the story of Thunderball. And the title Never Say Never Again makes reference to the fact that Connery said he would never play Bond again after Diamonds Are Forever.
Good night, Mr. Bond. Well, go on. It's merely a lift. Or perhaps I should say elevator. In any event, I'm sure you'll find it much more convenient than mountaineering about outside the White House. You press L, Mr. Bond. The word lobby begins with L.
If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment below, I'll always respond to those. And if you're the first time visitor here, please hit that subscribe button. There's new content every week. All I have left to say is stay safe, stay vintage, and cheers everyone.